since we've been talking about generic melee heroes, let's move on to the humble noble, or should I say the haughty noble? Probably haughty. Yeah, the High Elves generic melee hero. I should go ahead and just quickly clarify. Some of you guys were a little bit confused in my Exalted Heroes video. I know these classifications are mostly just in my mind and kind of arbitrary, but I don't consider the Skaven Assassin, Clannish Assassin, to be a generic melee hero. I consider him to be an assassin type hero, which is its own classification, right? Which has, you know, Goblo Big Boss. You've got the Cainite Assassin, obviously. Basically, those are the main three that I can think of. Maybe you could put the Skink Chief in there as well. It's just because that's his role on the campaign map. But anyway, I'm talking more like captain type dudes, right? Like generally armored, generally without too many assassination debuffs, maybe some support abilities. So of course we're talking like White Kings, Exalted Heroes, Nobles, Empires, Captains, and so on. Anyway, today this replay from Coops. He's going up against Vampire Coast with the Lithanar here. He's got 3 Shadow Warriors, whole bunch of Rangers, Mage Lore of Fire, Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, 1 Silver Helm, and some Reavers with the Noble. Going up against Silostra and some cannons. We've got plenty of zombies with guns, with polearms, with dual hand weapons, some Rotting Prometheans as well, some bombers. Yeah, 2 carronades, 2 mortars, so a lot of artillery. And already you can see that Silostra could be a severe problem for this high health build if it weren't for the Noble. And there are quite a few matchups where generally your opponent's going to be low armor, maybe infantry based, maybe, you know, without too many high armor large targets. There's quite a few factions that it may even have quite a bit of armor, but not too many large targets, like dwarves, for example, right? And in those types of situations, you mostly want to construct your army for that fact, but oftentimes there are, say, maybe 1 or 2 specific, very good, very high value, large armored targets, like in this case, the big old crabs. And Silostra, you know, on top of it, makes it that much more valuable, right? And so from a build perspective, you know, you have that 1 or 2 tools that can deal with the big armored monster, and the rest of your army can kind of kill all of the infantry. So Shadow Warriors are going to focus, but the 150 armor of Silostra on the crab, it means they're not going to do much damage. Even Lithanar won't do as much. I mean, he does have pretty good damage overall, but not like the Empire, you know, bow heroes. But the Carronade's definitely been firing away. The Cavalry trying to get back into the back line. A little bit of a Burning Head unleashed as well. The Rangers have mostly been doing pretty well in the front line, but the Bombers definitely making their presence felt. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of zombies around, so the Reapers, having taken quite a bit of damage, are going to rout there. Noble's just hanging back for now, protecting all these archers from Silostra, and this is a pretty smart idea as well, not coming within range of the handguns. Likewise, shutting down the carronades as quickly as possible, because you can see, like, this mortar's turn. Honestly, though, the carronades should be focusing on the Noble, you know, from a targeting priority perspective. Obviously, very important thing for any missile-based faction like Vampire Coast or Dwarfs. You have to have the right target priority. The Noble is probably #1 target priority right now in terms of protecting Silostra. I mean, with the Eagle Claw mostly shut down, it's down to only 1 artillery piece. It's going to do a little bit of chip damage over time to Silostra, but it's not the biggest threat. The biggest threat is by far the Noble, so allocating like the handguns and trying to get shots way across the field with the cannon to hit the Noble going to be the right call. But he gets a Flaming Sword of Ruin. The damn Knights Errant are going to run away from that, and the Doggos also chasing, doing some nice damage on the Shadow Warriors. The damn Knights Errant trying their best to get on the Shadow Warriors as well, but nice little interrupt here from the regrouped Reavers, and the Noble also fighting. Summoned Rotting Prometheans also going after the Shadow Warriors there. Meanwhile, the Rangers have finally broken through to the artillery pieces. The Rotting Prometheans responding, helping to clean up those Silver Helms, but they should be able to at least force crumbling. No, not quite. Bombers also bombing out the last of the Rangers there, so the assault sort of falling somewhat short, still leaving this 1 carronade online. Again, could be threatening to the Noble, but because this engagement's taking place so far away, the Noble's kind of on a little bit of a backslope here. And it looks like the summons are about to run out for Silostra. Both the Crabs and the damn Knights Errant dropped right there. Suddenly, this is going to be an engagement that the Noble 1v1 here, it's still risky for him to take this. Although 4460 with Martial Prowess active is just straight up better in terms of combat stats, the anti-infantry of Silostra does not apply here. The HP differential between these two means that if Silostra gets good RNG, she can absolutely win this, but right now the Noble definitely not taking too many hits. Flaming Sword of Ruin for some additional weapon damage. You get that Kindle Flame Spike as well for that little bit of extra damage while that's up. It's mostly what you take it for, right? Because it doesn't really give armor-piercing damage, but still pretty solid. Silostra takes a beating from the Noble there, and thankfully doesn't take too much damage in return. Also plenty of fire being poured in by Elithnar and the Shadow Warriors as well. One last spiteful summon of crabs. The big crab lady more or less just soloed by the Noble here, which is pretty impressive all things considered. She's going to turn her back, try and leave her crabs to do her work, but she's taking so much damage at this point, she's very likely to step into crumbling. We'll see, though. You can see that things do start to turn around slightly with support here, with the crabs in position to support. The Noble's definitely not going to have as good of a time in that little bit of a surround, but Cascading Fire Cloak, super great spell for synergizing here, puts him up to 84 melee defense, 395 weapon strength. I will say the biggest downside of the Noble is being an elf, he is weak, and therefore has low HP and weapon strength in comparison to other similarly costed, similarly typed units. As a result, I wouldn't put the Noble... I don't know. There's an argument he should be in the number 5 spot. Just to reiterate, again, probably... I might make a video literally just ranking all the generic melee heroes, but generally I would say in the top 5, you got like Paladin, White King up there. There was one other one that I'm definitely forgetting about. Anyway, I said Exalted Hero is number 4. The Noble is just like, I don't know. There's quite a few contenders for that number 5 spot in my mind. We'll talk about that more in just a little bit, but the Noble now, another Cascading Fire Cloak, just grinding down what's left of the Rotting Prometheans. Basically all of the bowmen have used up their ammunition here. Shadow Warriors move into melee there. Lithnar's got a few more shots left. But basically everything is crumbling at this point. Carronade's still alive, but can one Carronade and one Mortar take out all of this? The Bomber's also crumbling. Those Rangers somehow not routing. But as soon as Silostra goes down here, that's probably going to trigger army losses for Vampire Counts, as a lot of these units will start to suffer leadership penalties, start crumbling. Yep, the cannon's still fighting somehow, but... there it goes, disintegration, the guns all blow up, the zombies fall over, and that's a victory for the High Elves. So big thanks to Coop for sending that one in. He's a patron of mine, so definitely appreciative of his support in both replays and financially, and had some pretty fun games recently as well. But yeah, the Rangers actually perform relatively decently in a couple cases. A few of them get bombed out, but the Noble there carrying 1384 in terms of damage value. He's relatively cheap just on horseback with not too many abilities. We'll check that out in just a minute as we sort of talk about other generic melee heroes. But yeah, Mage Lore of Fire not getting too much value. Really didn't have to do too much, honestly. The cavalry helped clean up a little bit there. Silverhelm's getting in the back line, shutting down a handful of those artillery pieces. Silostra just getting wrecked by that Noble, actually not getting that much value in and of herself. It's pretty rough, but the Bomber is definitely still quite good. Even after the nerfs, I still think the way to deal anti-infantry damage primarily as Coast is to take bombers, like maybe 2 or 3 bombers. Can be very effective. The artillery also, mortars do okay. Cannons also kind of do okay. Don't really pay for themselves, but yeah, very interesting stuff. So just moving on to talk about mounts also. We saw him on horseback here. Obviously, he has the Chariot, which is a very popular pick with Alariel to heal it. 110 armor, armor-piercing weapon damage, 74 charge bonus. With Martial Prowess, also really decent melee stats, like 36 melee defense for character Chariot's pretty decent. But just comparing kind of base cost, you can see I've got tons of factions up. I can't even fit all the generic melee heroes, on screen here. But the Scarvet, I would put in the top 5. Paladin probably is number 1 just because he's so cheap, and also has Guardian, has a Horse and Pegasus mount, both of which are quite, again, cheap as well. Charm Shield's also pretty decent, but mostly the Guardian, the anti-large, decent stats, for the cost, like only 650 points, which him on horseback costs less than most of these other heroes on foot, right? So that's why I would say Paladin pretty clearly in my mind is number 1. Number 2 is probably the White King, just because of what he represents. Not only is he really good, especially for undead, for the cost, Melee defense solid, 90 armor with a silver shield, 410 weapon strength is just straight up good. I mean, even comparing a lot of the halberd units in this class, you know, don't have even 400 weapon strength. So that's pretty decent, even though it's not the best AP, with an anti-infantry bonus as well, even better than the Beast, right? 20 bonus for infantry. I think the bonus might be slightly lower here. 14, yeah, so kind of evens that out somewhat. But still, also has Heroic Killing Blow, but more importantly, Scab's Graph, excellent AoE damage item. Obviously, the Vampire Count's lacking any kind of ranged. This does give them sort of a ranged attack in a way to go after infantry, or potentially like archers or something in the backline. Bob's a little bit too expensive for me to include in this top 5. I mean, just comparing his stats to someone like, for 225 extra points, you're basically getting an exalted hero, more or less, with immune to psychology. Like, yes, he gets armor piercing if you take him on the boar. He also has some important support abilities for greenskins. That plus 10 melee attack's really strong. And, of course, immune to psychology's really, really good for greenskins. But he's pretty expensive. I mean, 825 is the most expensive of the ones I have pulled up here currently, even more expensive than the Wargore, who just got the price increase. Still fairly solid, although I think they might have gone a little bit too far. I think you could put him at 700, like these two elves and the Scarvet. But getting back to the matter at hand, the Noble, you can see at 2766 is slightly higher, sorry, slightly lower than the Master, and is actually the lowest of any of the units I have pulled up. No, actually, same HP as the Paladin. That does surprise me. And I'd have to check the Empire Captain. I don't even have him up here because he's so cheap and really has nothing going on. I mean, stats are noticeably worse than the other units in this class, but yeah, 350 points. I mean, he's the cheapest, for sure, but also 2766 in terms of HP. Okay, so that is actually not too bad, but weapon strength-wise, I mean, 375 is more total weapon strength than the Noble, even though obviously Noble has better AP and anti-large, but still, just thinking of, like, going up against an unarmored target, they're going to be dishing out pretty close to the same amount of damage against even a large unarmored target, I should say, because it's, what, 35 bonus versus large there. Obviously, Noble has much superior stats. Does lack a shield, though, and only 80 armor on foot. Does go to 100 on horseback. The Eagle's a weird one. You know, in campaign, this is decent to take, but the fact that you lose your armor piercing and anti-large, 72 charge bonus is okay, but 47-35, you do still have martial prowess, but only 60 armor. Really not great. Like, you compare this guy 1200, it's, you know, 400 points, extra 50% cost over a regular Grey Eagle, and you do get quite a bit more for what you're paying, but is it actually worth it? Eagles, I don't know. I don't think it's worth it, really. The Chariot, on the other hand, though, you still retain armor piercing. Weapon strength does go down slightly overall, but you get an anti-infantry bonus, 74 charge, and 110 armor, and still keeping that martial prowess. Again, this is a really popular combination with Alariel for healing, because they have a pretty good HP pool. That melee defense means they can definitely take a beating and still keep fighting. So, probably rambled on long enough about generic melee heroes. Again, if you guys would like to see me just rank all of them in a video, maybe I can do that in the future. But for now, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.